Make sure. Okay. Welcome to another episode of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. I'm your host, Michael. Joining me this week is all the way live from Taiwan. Sean, what's going on, Sean?
Hey, what's up?
For those who are new to the Pound for Pound Boxing Report, Pound for Pound Boxing Report is a YouTube show / blog / podcast that discusses all things boxing. Our motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When boxing is bad, we will talk about it. The bottom line is, if it concerns boxing, we will talk about it. If you want to find information about the Pound for Pound Boxing Report, more information about the Pound for Pound Boxing Report, two main places you can go. You can go to the official blog page for the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. The link for that is p4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. We'll repeat that, p4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. The blog, by the way, nominated for 2014 Black Web Blog Award in the category of Best Sports Blog. Currently in the semifinals for the voting. Be sure to be a premier Power Bear buddy. Make sure to vote for the Pound for Pound Boxing Report to advance to the finals for the Black Web Blog Awards. You can do that by going to blackwebblogawards.com and repeat that, blackwebblogawards.com, and be a friend, be a pal, be a buddy. Again, make sure to vote for the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. And the blog itself, Pound for Pound Boxing Report blog, it will have not only past episodes of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report podcast, but also blogs been written by yours truly. Another place you can go to check out info on the Pound for Pound Boxing Report is the podcast page. The link for that is p4pboxingreport.podomatic.com, and repeat that, p4pboxingreport.podomatic.com. And on the podcast page, you can find all previous episodes of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report podcast. On the blog page and the podcast page as well, you can find links to find the Pound for Pound Boxing Report all over the internet, all over social media. On Facebook, on YouTube, on Google+. We got a Tumblr page, the Twitter. The Twitter handle is at P4P Boxing Report. We got a Pinterest board. You can subscribe to the RSS feed. We're on Stitcher Radio. Both the podcast page and the blog page got links to where to find us on Stitcher. And also, we have a link where you can donate your account. And the address for that is donateyouraccount.com/P4/P4P Boxing Report. And repeat that, donateyouraccount.com/P4P Boxing Report. And what happens is, if you donate your Twitter account, any tweet that comes from the Pound for Pound Boxing Report Twitter page, your Twitter account will automatically retweet any tweet that comes from the Pound for Pound Boxing Report Twitter page. With that being said, let's get the show started. It's going to be a short show tonight, YouTube-only show, so we're going to start doing it. Last night, if you checked out the YouTube page, you saw a brief little summary, brief little recap of Jermain Taylor's win over Sam Soliman to capture the IBF middleweight champion as Jermain Taylor becomes middleweight champion again. Since you're on the show with me tonight, Sean, I want to give you the time to give your brief analysis of the fights and your thoughts on what happened last night in Biloxi, Mississippi.
Well, congratulations to Taylor. It's nice to see him come back from basically what was a career-ending boxing sort of incident with brain bleeds to come back and win the 160 title once again. So that's great for him, great for his legacy. As far as the fight, I wasn't overly impressed with either boxer. I mean, Soliman moved a lot but wasn't very effective, and Taylor, I don't think, was using his jab as much as he could have, as much as would have benefited him more. Would have made it easier for him to land his right. But like when we were discussing earlier, he did look like he was coming on later on in the fight, which just sort of coincided with Soliman's injury, which ended up making it a pretty easy night for him in the long run. I don't know what either one of these two will do up against the upper echelon guys at this weight, but it'll be interesting to see what Taylor does in his next fight, to see if he can sort of piggyback something off of this and maybe start to put his hands together and throw a few more different punches and a few more combinations and use his jab a little like he used to.
Actually, a couple of quick follow-up questions. During the fight, Soliman hurt his leg, round 7. I think Taylor was starting to come on. If Soliman had not hurt his leg, what kind of change would that have made as far as the fight goes? Do you think that Soliman would have won, because on my scorecard I had Soliman winning 4 of the first 5 rounds, though Taylor was coming on in round 6, and round 7 was kind of the decline of Sam Soliman. Do you think Soliman would have carried that early rounds momentum on throughout the fight, or do you think that Taylor, who, like I said, was coming on, do you think he would have grabbed the momentum and won the fight anyway?
It's hard to say. I mean, I think obviously it would have been more competitive fight, and Soliman did have the advantage, so all he had to do was win a couple of the later rounds to pull it out. Whereas, I mean, being hurt, he ended up getting knocked down like 3 extra times after that, which sort of made it an easy night for Taylor. I mean, if he wouldn't have hurt himself, he probably wouldn't have got knocked down any more times except for the initial one, which would have made it far closer and gave him a chance to pull it out since he did have the lead. I mean, I had him leading as well. I think I had him up only 3-2 on the top first 5.
Couple of interested observers were at the fight. Hassan Ndam, who of course defeated Curtis Stevens last week in a IBF eliminator, was there at the fight, and also Peter Quillin, former WBO middleweight champion who gave up his belt recently. He was at the fight as well. I mean, I was mentioning this on my little recap last night. And what was interesting about that is that Quillin and Taylor are both handled by Al Haymon. Of course, Ndam is a mandatory challenger. I believe it was reportedly broke today that Taylor has 4 months in order to make that fight happen. But with Quillin there, with both Taylor and Quillin being handled by Al Haymon, do you think the mandatory with Ndam will happen, or do you think that money will talk? Maybe some buyout will be given to Ndam, and we may see Jermain Taylor versus Peter Quillin first?
I don't see the point. I mean, why would Quillin want the fight with Taylor anyways? He gave up a fight with Korobov when he was the champion, which would have led to bigger and better things, him being the champion.
I mean, I'm just asking. I don't either. I don't either, especially when you consider. Well. Yeah, especially when you consider as well, he also turned out at $1.4 million payday. I was just asking because he happened to be there. It just makes you wonder.
Yeah, like the people at the fight said the same thing. And me, I just don't understand. Is that a step forward? I mean, is he going to make more money fighting Taylor? Like, who really wants to watch that fight? I mean, people were against the Taylor-Soliman fight. Luckily, Soliman got hurt and Taylor got the victory. But, I mean, that doesn't make the fight intriguing. And, I mean, Quillin, we thought, gave up his biggest payday potentially and his title because he had a big fight waiting for him, maybe like a Cotto people were discussing. And if that was the point, if he was giving up a fight for 1.4 against Korobov to fight Cotto for as much money as he could make there, okay, I mean, you can see that financially that makes more sense. And he could beat Cotto, so I mean that would be a better sort of upward momentum for him. And that fight would be in New York and everything else, and that would be a huge fight. But to fight Taylor, who cares? I mean, Taylor should fight his mandatory. I mean, that's the fight that ESPN put together, the 2 cards to sort of lead them into something. So, and hopefully they would have their fight on ESPN again, and that would be good. More network TV, get them out there so people can watch them, and it would just be better. I mean, I don't see why Quillin would even entertain that fight.
Absolutely. Let's move on and talk about a couple of fights that went down this weekend quickly. First fight took place in Mexico. WBC featherweight champion Jhonny Gonzalez defended the belt against Jorge Arce in Arce's hometown of Los Mochis, Mexico. Gonzalez scored an 11-round TKO. Really battered Arce throughout. After a bit of a slow start early on, he picked up the pace. Scored a knockdown, I want to say, in round 5. And really from that bout, it was Gonzalez all the way, punished Arce throughout the bout. I thought the bout should have been stopped a little bit sooner. Arce after the bout announced his retirement. I hope he stays true to that announcement. Before the fight, when I was talking about this, and when Ken and I were talking about this on the show, we just saw that there was really no hope for Arce going in, and really turned out to be the case, Sean. I don't know if you saw the fight, but if you did, or if you read about the fight, your analysis of what went down Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, it's what everybody would expect. You know, an old guy who basically is just trying to get another payday against a friend who's a champion, who's looking for an easy fight against a name opponent. So, I mean, that's what it was. And Gonzalez, I was surprised that actually the fight went so long. I thought Gonzalez would have got rid of him like within the first 5 rounds. But maybe he was taking it easy on his friend. You know, I mean, as far as the boxing world, this fight doesn't mean much. Everybody wants to see Gonzalez in there with like a top guy, somebody he's been sort of ducking lately after his big win against Mares. But this is a stay busy fight. Good money for both of them. Apparently on network TV it was like over 12 million people watched it live or something, or 16 million, I can't remember the number specifically. But you know that financially they both did fairly well off of this. Arce, it's nice for him. He gets another payday based on his name. And Gonzalez, hopefully now from this he can go and fight somebody that we want to watch him fight.
Yeah, speaking of the featherweight landscape, I mean, listen, let's take a look at it right quick. You got Gonzalez out there. You got Nicholas Walters out there who's going to be fighting Donaire. You got Gradovich who's going to be defending his belt later on this year as well. Lomachenko, who I believe is going to be fighting on the undercard of Pacquiao Algieri. Yeah. You still got Abner Mares out there. Really good crop of fighters at 126 pounds. You got Vijeka out there, the South African. When you look at the featherweight landscape, Jhonny Gonzalez, who has, as I've said before, when he's good, he can be really good, but he also can be bad and lose to fighters that he should not lose to. He's bipolar in that sense. Where do you see him fitting at the 126-pound featherweight landscape?
What makes this such a good group of fighters is that, I mean, depending on the matchup, different guys will win, right? You know, that's what makes it interesting. You can't who's who until after it's all done. I mean, it's nice to see Donaire is fighting Walters coming up soon, because that'll show us. I
believe it may be next week, as a matter of fact, on the undercard of Gradovich and on the card of Golovkin and Rubio, I believe.
Yeah, so that'll be a great card too, and so we'll see who wins out of that, which will be excellent. I mean, that's a really 50-50 fight. I don't know who to pick. I mean, historically I would have picked Donaire, but the way he's looked lately, I sort of have to lean towards Walters. But either way, great fight. And I mean, Lomachenko's fighting a Thai guy, I think. I'm not sure who he is, but just a bounce-back fight after his first big win against Gary Russell. Hopefully we'll get him in there with somebody big afterwards. I mean, you wouldn't be surprised to see him in there against the winner of Donaire Walters. But that leaves all those other guys who are just sitting there. Hopefully we can get Jhonny Gonzalez a rematch with Mares, or possibly get him in there with Gradovich. Gradovich has a fight, like you're saying, coming up soon against not really a top guy. I wasn't too familiar with his name.
Let me make a correction here. It's Lomachenko who's going to be defending his belt on the undercard of Pacquiao Algieri.
Yeah.
And Gradovich is going to be fighting on the undercard of Terence Crawford and Ray Beltran.
Nice. Good cards. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how that all plans out next year when they all get together. Hopefully they can get together.
Let's hope so, and let's hope that this proposed, this talked about rumored featherweight tournament that may happen in 2015. Let hope this happens, because that was something I really would look forward to. That's one of the best things that could happen in 2015 actually.
you should move Rigo up there, and then they can't complain that he has no one to fight.
Oh, here we go.
Move him up there. I mean, it's perfect. And then you have 8 quality guys fighting at one weight, and then we'll see who is the best when all is said.
Yeah, absolutely. Triple header took place on Showtime this past weekend. But look, the main event was Ramses Bartholomew. He defended his bout against a guy by the name of Salcedo. Ho-hum, boring fight. Really don't want to talk about it because easy win against an easy guy. Marta Rosen, he scored a 10-round win over Willie Nelson. Vadas Marta Rosen, nice win for Marta Rosen. There were some folks who thought that Willie Nelson actually had a shot to win that bout, so nice win by him. But I want to focus on the beginning bout. The decline, Sean, of Chad Dawson continues. Following his stoppage loss to Andre Ward, he comes back. He gets knocked out in 1 round by Adonis Stevenson. He had a fight a few months back in which he was really overweight and out of shape. This time, Chad Dawson claimed that he's back for this fight. He was in shape and whatnot. But he ended up losing a 10-round decision win to a guy by the name of Karpency. Personally, I thought I had Dawson winning by a couple of points. The fight was close. It could have went either way. Official scores were 96-94 for Karpency on 2 judges' scorecards, 96-94 for Dawson on the 3rd. But it wasn't the fact that the fight may have been controversial. I don't think it was really. It was the fact that Chad Dawson, who not too long ago was at the top of the heap at 175 pounds, there's a precipitous fall on his part. And even though you could have made an argument for Dawson winning this bout, the fact is he just didn't look good. Just bad for bad Chad Dawson all around.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, that is a fight he should have been able to win just with his jab. The thing that I think was worse was just his attitude about it afterwards. You know, like talking about how they want Chad Dawson out of boxing. It's like, who are they? Are they the ones that put you in with big money fights that you got knocked out in both of them and then dropped off the radar, came back fat and lazy and unmotivated? Are they the ones that did that, or is that you? You know, like, he's just looking for an excuse on why he didn't get the decision. Instead of, like, making excuses, crying and whining and blaming everybody else, he should just ask for a rematch and say that he'd be ready next time and he would be fit. Because it's unfortunate that, you know, he didn't get the decision. But, I mean, at the same time, I mean, he didn't do enough to win. Not really. It was close. So, I mean, he has no one to blame but himself.
How would you compare his situation to Lucien Boutte, former 168-pound fighter? He was riding high until he fought Carl Froch, got destroyed, comes back, loses to Pascal. He's now in the men. He's going to be fighting later on this year. I think the two situations are kind of comparable. You can kind of compare the two. Boutte, a lot of people feel that he cannot come back. Do you see a similar situation in terms of Chad Dawson here?
No, because Boutte is doing everything he can to come back. He's working hard and he's trying to adjust and get better and prepare himself. And he came back against Pascal, who's a top-level guy, and he lost the decision. But I don't think Pascal beat him so bad, so dominant. I thought both of them looked so during that fight. When Pascal talked about him being so great, I was like, really? You don't look too great to me. But now, I mean, Boutte is in there with Freddie Roach training, getting a new trainer, a new perspective, and we'll see what happens. But I mean, he's working hard and he's trying to come back. Whereas Taylor, yeah, I don't know. I don't think his head's in the game. I think.
You mean Dawson?
Dawson, yeah. I don't think his head's in the game. I think that's the biggest problem. He didn't come into that fight motivated. Otherwise, he would have just walked through that guy.
How much do you buy the issue of Dawson hurting his shoulder?
Oh, well, I mean, he can hurt his shoulder, but I still think he should have been able to beat that guy with just his jab. I mean...
Right. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, because I mean, he's a top level guy. He's a world champion. I mean, he had knocked out by two elite fighters. I mean, one guy who's a big puncher and he just got caught. The other guy who's ranked number 2 in the world. So I mean, it's no shame to lose to those guys. So coming in with this guy who's not even ranked 10th, and who's just like, he's a tough kid who comes and fights, and he will stick in there and do what he can. That's what he was. I mean, he should have been able to move, use the jab, and just ended up pulling that fight off. Somebody said a comparison about, how great fighters do that. Like even Arthur Abram, fought with one arm before, and I mean, Ali fought with a broken jaw, and Larry Holmes, I mean, near the end of his career, he was just a guy with a jab, but he could still win only with his jab.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, a guy like him, that level of fighter against this guy, he should have been able to do enough to pull it off. He just didn't. And all he can blame is himself because he wasn't prepared. He wasn't able to do what he needed to do.
Before we move on and kind of go to the meat of the show, a roundtable discussion, your thoughts? We mentioned Ndam and his fight with Curtis Stevens last week while we were talking about Jermain Taylor. Your thoughts on Ndam's win over Curtis Stevens? Was it a situation where Ndam was very good, Curtis Stevens very bad, or a combination of both?
I think it's styles. I mean, Ndam's really tall, really long. He moves a lot. Stevens is a guy that just loads up for his left hook and was looking for that one punch all night. Not doing. I thought early on he did what he needed to do. He was pushing him against the ropes, pressuring, cutting off the ring. If he would have kept that up, I mean, who knows what would have happened. But Ndam ended up just using the ring and moving and just not letting him get his shot off. And Stevenson was too busy looking for the one punch, which, with guys like him, that tends to be the norm, right? They know they have the power, and then they just get power happy. Everybody knows Stevens is limited. That's no surprise. Ndam, the thing with him, we questioned his chin after the Quillin fight when he went down 7 times. So that's why this fight was big, because you're fighting a guy with big power, and you have to see how Ndam would be able to deal with it. And he took the power well, and he did what he needed to do. So, upwards and onwards.
When you look at Stevens, I make the argument that Stevens needs a change in terms of his corner work. Either get rid of his team or maybe add someone new to his team. I was talking to a former world champion, live tweeting about that during the bout. He was frustrated at the lack of advice in Stevens' corner during the bout. What do you think about do you think that Curtis Stevens may need an additional voice to his corner, a fresh voice, a fresh person to give him some advice? Because when it came to the fight against Ndam, the lack of strategy, as far as I'm concerned, was clearly evident. Clearly wasn't there.
Yeah, no, I think that would be a good thing. I mean, it wouldn't hurt. I mean, of course, a lot of the preparation goes in training, but then in the corner, it's nice to have maybe somebody that's going to be able to direct you and give you some positive outlook on how to do something. Like even Rosado did that recently, added a new voice, and seemed to work well for him. With a guy like Stevenson, I mean, that was the problem. He just looked for one punch all night and didn't do the small things he needed to do to get the victory. So maybe somebody else was giving him some direction. Maybe he would have been able to focus on some of those small things a little better. But he's still a pretty limited fighter who relies too much on power. So maybe his biggest problem is that he needs to do some extra stuff in training camp.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on. Kind of the main topic of tonight's show, the meat of tonight's show. This story broke last week. Didn't talk about it because for me, there wasn't enough information about the story. And what the story I'm talking about is an apparent deal between Al Haymon and NBC. As Kathy Duval in the story by Boxing Scene, she kind of outlined the deal between NBC and Al Haymon. Basically, the article is basically saying that Haymon promised NBC that he's going to take his fighters off of premium cable. He's going to put them possibly on, not just on Showtime and HBO. Put them. He's going. In short, he's going to a scenario where he can bring his premium fighters off of premium cable and possibly put them on MSNBC. Suppose a $20 million deal. I'm still a little vague about this deal. A week after the news broke, have you heard anything new or any more details about this deal between Haymon and NBC, and why Kathy Duva decided to step away from her deal with NBC?
Well, Kathy Duva had an existing deal, and when it was being renegotiated, I think that's when Al Haymon sort of got in there and sort of pushed her out, and that's sort of why she leaked it. But at the same time, she sort of took the upper ground and sort of wished him all the best. But I think she was sort of had her desire to be the one there. But I mean, obviously he has a lot of great fighters, so you could see why they would want him instead. Apparently he paid $20 million as well to them as sort of a bonus. Obviously he's going to be making lots of money from them. I think he's getting guaranteed 24 fight dates on the network, and that can be extended. Like with her, when she did it, they extended her contract, or extended the amount of fights. So apparently the same thing can happen depending on the cards that get put together and the success on network TV. So for him, it could get much bigger, and the money is huge because you don't have to worry about selling 1.4 million pay-per-views. You're going to have 10, 15 million people watching on network television.
Yeah, according to the details, most of the shows will be on NBC Sports Network. However, there are 4 dates that might be slated for prime time on regular NBC, with one possibly happening the week of the Super Bowl, which will be televised on regular NBC. The question is, does that mean, if he's talking about bringing his prominent fighters over to NBC, does this mean that an Adonis Stevenson, other prominent fighters that he may have right now in his stable, does that mean he's going to bring them to NBC? And that's number one. Number two, this deal on the surface sounds well, it sounds reasonable, it sounds really good actually. But if we're going to keep getting piss poor cards, what does that really do? Because tell me the last time that Al Haymon has put together a good card on Showtime, pay-per-view, or anywhere else. I'll wait.
Last year. Last year he put lots of good cards together.
But he hasn't done anything over the past year. I mean, the only good fight that he's... Look, the Fonfara Stevenson was a good fight. Mayweather Maidana 1 was a good fight. But the cards itself were not good.
No, I know what you're saying, but I think some people, thinking conspiracy-wise, they sort of think that he's selling Showtime down the drain. And truth be told, basically that's what he would be doing if he signed this contract, because how would him signing the contract with NBC help Showtime? Because he has all those fighters that are now going to be fighting on network television. So people are going to be less inclined to spend money to watch pay-per-view events.
Yeah, if I was Showtime, I wouldn't be happy with this one bit.
Yeah, but that's what he's doing. He's fucking them over. And I mean, not just them, but also HBO. So by doing this, he's basically trying to screw over all the pay-per-view guys. And I mean, Floyd's almost done, so it doesn't really affect him. And then once he's there and he has all his big stable of fighters, they're going to be more recognized by the common person because they're going to be on network television. They're going to be watched by way more people. Financially, it's going to benefit everybody except for Showtime and HBO.
How do you think, you mentioned HBO, how do you think they will react to this news? And it's not just HBO, but other promoters specifically Bob Arum.
Well, I think, there's not much.
Bob Arum, yeah, specific?
I don't think there's much they can do. I mean, you know, it is what it is. They just have to hope that it doesn't affect them too much, that they put on good cards on HBO, and some of it I think will just be regular HBO, not as many pay-per-view events.
Boxing in its heyday, back in the 70s, particularly in the 80s, you had bouts on domestic ABC, NBC, CBS, and even smaller shows on USA Today with Tuesday Night Fights, ESPN. We had regular shows throughout the year. Let's just say this deal turns out to be good. He brings significant fighters and good fights over there over the next, let's just say, 3, 4, 5 years. Do you think that this could mark a return to boxing on regular television moving forward? Do you think that a CBS or ABC could look at this, if this deal with NBC is successful, and look at what and say, hey, maybe we should make a move to bring boxing back to network television, maybe not on a year-round basis, but maybe have a series of, say, like a spring, summer series before football, before NFL, and say and bring boxing back that way?
Oh,
or do you think this is, or do you think this is just a standalone thing with NBC?
No, I think that's exactly what will happen. I mean, Golden Boy, I mean, they already do this, but on lower networks, you know, like Telemundo and a bunch of other ones. So they're recognized. They have lots of cards all the time. And so, I mean, they're there, and they're a known commodity, as well as, I mean, Oscar being Olympian and well-known and everything else. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him join up with one of the other networks once Al Haymon takes over there. Because, I mean, usually that's what happens with TV, right? You know, it's competitive, so they will look for something to counteract the competitor. And, I mean, Golden Boy has a good reputation, unlike Al Haymon. So he's marketable, and they could use that as well. I mean, Bob Arum, him being associated a little more now with Golden Boy, I mean, that might be how he does it. I don't know if he would specifically be involved himself at this point of his career. I think he'd just be putting more of his focus on Asia.
Well, I mentioned Aaron because I would hope he would react and possibly make a deal with a CBS or ABC too, because look, it can be done, and it can be done on the cheap. Look, if they can bring MMA or extreme sports there on the relative cheap, and you can get entertainment there, why not these guys, these promoters, these managers, these promoters specifically, bring their fighters there on a relatively, not on a necessarily cheap, but for a good amount, or put up a good budget, or even, let's just say, or HBO in general make a deal where instead of having their pay-per-view bouts re-air on a Showtime, why not put it on a CBS? Why not put it on an ABC? Their pay-per-view bouts. Or better yet, put one of their big main event shows, put it on a replay on a network television and make a deal there.
Yeah. I don't know why they don't do that already, because it's better, because you circulate your fighters and make them more household name. And you already made your money on pay-per-view, so what do you care that a week later it's rebroadcasted?
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing we know about boxers, look, because boxing is a niche sport now, they would go for it because they want the attention. They love the attention. The attention for them means popularity, which means more money. I mean, look, if Floyd Mayweather could sit there and complain about someone in Brixton over in England not knowing who he is and make a big deal of that, what makes you think a lesser-known fighter wouldn't go for a deal, wouldn't go for possibly fighting on network television, even if it means making it a little bit less currently, if it means over time they're making more money?
Sure. I mean, why do you think Floyd did Dancing with the Stars?
Valid. Touche. Good point. He basically used that as a platform to become what he is now. Is that's the most highest paid athlete in the world. He did that with Dancing with the Stars. He did that with the WWE stuff. So, absolutely great point. So I could see, for me, a litany of boxing. I mean, let's look. We mentioned Gennady Golovkin. He would be a perfect fighter for network television. We mentioned the proposed featherweight tournament. I mean, back in the '80s, you saw a lot of lightweight fighters in the early '90s as well. How do you think Michael Carbajal became so popular? Johnny Tapia, Boomba Mancini at the Camacho, Whitaker, Pazienza, all those guys. So it's there. Just hopefully this deal with NBC can lead to something bigger. That's my hope. The problem is, I wonder if Al Haymon has it in him to do the necessary work to make this deal the best thing possible, not just for him but for the sport as well.
I think Al Haymon is about money, and I think this for him is big cash, and he has the fighters to do it. So I don't think he will screw it up. I mean, as long as he builds the matchups well, so the fights on TV are good, I mean, that's all he has to do. The rest is just sit back and collect the money.
Yeah, let's hope so.
The fighters are happy because, from their perspective, they make more money, and he's getting them more publicity, more notoriety, things that most of the fighters in the last 20 years haven't got.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's hope that actually turns out to be a case. And maybe you'll see Floyd Mayweather fight eventually on NBC. That would be great. Hopefully it gets Pacquiao, but since Mayweather seems to be talking about Pacquiao more than signing a contract to get in the ring, that would likely not happen. Anyway, I think we're going to shut the show down and close the show down on that note. For folks who want to reach out to you, Sean, let the folks know where they can find you.
Google plus Sean Newton, and YouTube, Sean Newton as well.
Absolutely.
Go ahead. And on the YTBC.
Yeah. One more thing that kind of popped in my mind before I start to shut the show down, let folks know where they can find me. The fight with Billy Joe Saunders and Chris Eubank Jr. First, it was supposed to be a press conference about it. Then news broke that Eubank Jr. didn't sign the contract because he, according to him, and I kind of believe him in this case, he didn't get enough notification about the contract when they kind of bum rushed the contract to him, Frank Warren. Well, news broke that the fight indeed is going to happen in late November. Your thoughts on first of all the fight being rescheduled, remade, and your early opinions on the potential bout. I personally think that Eubank Jr. He has a more than a good shot to win. I think he's overall the more talented fighter. The question is experience.
Yeah, no, I think the reason the fight was delayed is because Eubank and his father were using strong-arm tactics to get what they wanted in deals done. I mean, Saunders referred to it when he was all upset about the contract not being signed, saying that he's asking for this and asking for that, and basically I've just told my people to say, fine, give him what he wants. So I think basically he was just doing that as a way to strong-arm. As far as him not being prepared, I mean, they all have lawyers, and the lawyers had all this documentation a long time before. He didn't need to be in the UK to know what was going on because his lawyers already read the papers and knew everything else. So I don't buy that because it's not like Eubank is going to read the contracts himself anyways.
But I think that had, excuse me for interrupting, but I think that had a lot to do with Eubank Sr. and his folks. I think, because for me, I don't fully trust Frank Warren. He's a swindler. He's a shyster, and so I can see a scenario where he can kind of push the deal on folks and try to strong arm folks into signing a deal that they really don't want. And particularly since Warren and Eubank Sr. in particular, they've had issues in the past.
I know, but Warren also knows that dealing with Eubank Sr. is not like someone who you can take advantage of. So, you know, I sort of question that. I think, you know, Eubank Sr. is using a little bit of his experience to get what he wants for his son. But regardless, I mean, it's great that the fight is made. And like you referred to, I mean, I think Eubank's super talented fighter. It'll be really interesting to see what happens with him over the next 5 years. Super talent. But Saunders is a great boxer. The thing that I wonder about this fight, if it will sort of replay like DeGale against Groves. You know, the one really slick, skilled fighter sort of being outworked. And I can see Saunders being more experienced, fighting better competition, and being a busier fighter in the ring than Eubanks, who tends to sort of sit back and sort of look for the perfect shot a little too much and not be busy enough losing a decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that, we're going to officially close the show on that note. Sean gave his information where you can find him. Of course, you want to find out me about, look me up and talk to me about boxing or anything else. Twitter, Brother JR on Twitter, you can find me there. You'll find information about the Pound for Pound Boxing Report, of course, at P4P Boxing Report on Twitter, P4PBoxingReport.wordpress.com. That's the blog page. And again, go to BlackWebBlogAwards.com and vote for me in my blog for Best Sports Blog in the category of Best Sports Blog for the Black Web Blog Awards. You can go to BlackWebBlogAwards.com or check out the blog page, P4PBoxingReport.wordpress.com, all information about that. If you want to check out past episodes of the podcast, you can go to the blog page. You can also go to the podcast page, P4PBoxingReport.podomatic.com, on the podcast page and on the blog page. You'll find information of where to find the Pound for Pound Boxing Report all over social media, all over the internets, interwebs. No fight previews this week because, quite frankly, not much is going on this weekend in boxing. I mean, there's a fight between Carlos Molina and K9 Brundage. Blah. The fight is kind of meh to me. Not very interested in that fight, so we're going to hold off and really go into previews on the next episode next week, hopefully, to talk about the fights on the 18th. Very good card. Headline, of course, by Gennady Golovkin. Triple G is going to be fighting Marco Antonio Rubio. Outstanding featherweight bout on the undercard is Nonito Donaire going to be fighting Nicholas Walters in kind of the WBA's quote-unquote kind of a unification deal. We know how fraudulent that is, but the bottom line is a big fight. So those two fights, especially Edwin Rodriguez is going to be fighting on that same card as well in the cards in California. So we are going to talk heavy about that as well as any other boxing news that's going to be happening up to that time. So again, I want to thank Sean for joining me again all the way from Taiwan. Thanks for joining us, Sean. I know the time difference is difficult over there. Thanks for joining me.
My pleasure.
All right. For my guest, Sean, I am your host, Michael. This has been another episode of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. You guys have a good evening. Good night.